Chapter 15. Cedar Hill Inn. Mickey Linehan used the telephone to wake me a little after noon. "We're here," he told me. "Where's the reception committee?" "Probably stopped to get a rope. Check your bags and come up to the hotel. Room 537. Don't advertise your visit." I was dressed when they arrived. Mickey Linehan was a big slob with sagging shoulders and a shapeless body that seemed to be coming apart at all its joints. His ears stood out like red wings, and his round red face usually wore the meaningless smirk of a half-wit. He looked like a comedian, and was. Dick Foley was a boy-sized Canadian with a sharp, irritable face. He wore high heels to increase his height, perfumed his handkerchiefs, and saved all the words he could. They were both good operatives. "What did the old man tell you about the job?" I asked when we had settled into seats. The old man was the manager of the Continental San Francisco branch. He was also known as Pontius Pilate, because he smiled pleasantly when he sent us out to be crucified on suicidal jobs. He was a gentle, polite, elderly person with no more warmth in him than a hangman's rope. The agency wit said he could spit icicles in July. "He didn't seem to know much what it was all about," Mickey said, "except that you had wired for help. He said he hadn't got any reports from you for a couple of days. The chances are he'll wait a couple more. Know anything about this Poisonville?" Dick shook his head. Mickey said, "Only that I've heard parties call it Poisonville like they meant it." I told them what I knew and what I had done. The telephone bell interrupted my tale in the last quarter. Dinah Brand's lazy voice. "Hello? How's the wrist?" "Only a burn." "What do you think of the crush-out?" "It's not my fault," she said. "I did my part. If Noonan couldn't hold him, that's just too bad. I'm coming downtown to buy a hat this afternoon. I thought I'd drop in and see you for a couple of minutes if you're going to be there." "What time?" "Oh, around 3. "Right. I'll expect you. And I'll have that 200 and a dime I owe you." "Do," she said. "That's what I'm coming in for. Ta-ta." I went back to my seat and my story. When I had finished, Mickey Linehan whistled and said, "No wonder you're scared to send in any reports. The old man wouldn't do much if he knew what you've been up to, would he?" "If it works out the way I want it to, I won't have to report all the distressing details," I said. "It's right enough for the agency to have rules and regulations, but when you're out on a job, you've got to do it the best way you can. And anybody that brings any ethics to Poisonville is going to get them all rusty. A report is no place for the dirty details anyway, and I don't want you birds to send any writing back to San Francisco without letting me see it first." "What kind of crimes have you got for us to pull?" Mickey asked. "I want you to take Pete the Finn. Dick will take Lou Yard. You'll have to play it the way I've been playing. Do what you can when you can. I've an idea that the pair of them will try to make Noonan let Whisper alone. I don't know what he'll do. He's shifty as hell, and he does want to even up his brother's killing." "After I take this Finnish gent," Mickey said, "what do I do with him? I don't want to brag about how dumb I am, but this job is plain as astronomy to me. I understand everything about it, except what you have done and why, and what you're trying to do and how. You can start off by shadowing him. I've got to have a wedge that can be put between Pete and Yard, Yard and Noonan, Pete and Noonan, Pete and Thaler, or Yard and Thaler. If we could smash things up enough, break the combination, they'll have their knives in each other's backs, doing our work for us. The break between Thaler and Noonan is a starter, but it'll sag on us if we don't help it along. I could buy more dope on the whole lot from Dinah Brand, but there's no use taking anybody into court, no matter what you've got on them. They own the courts. And besides, the courts are too slow for us now. I've got myself tangled up in something, and as soon as the old man smells it, and San Francisco isn't far enough away to fool his nose, he's going to be sitting on the wire asking for explanations. I've got to have results to hide the details under, so evidence won't do. What we've got to have is dynamite." "What about our respected client, Mr. Elihu Wilson?" Mickey asked. "What are you planning to do with or to him? Maybe ruin him, maybe club him into backing us up. I don't care which." You'd better stay at the Hotel Person, Mickey, and Dick can go to the National. Keep apart. And if you want to keep me from being fired, burn the job up before the old man tumbles. Better write these down." I gave them names, descriptions, and addresses when I had them, of Elihu Wilson, Stanley Lewis, his secretary, Dinah Brand, Dan Rolfe, Noonan, Max Thaler, alias Whisper, his right-hand man, the chinless Jerry, Mrs. Donald Wilson, Lewis' daughter, who had been Donna Wilson's secretary, and Bill Quint, Dinah's radical ex-boyfriend. "Now, hop to it," I said, "and don't kid yourselves that there is any law in Poisonville except what you make for yourself." Mickey said, "I'd be surprised how many laws he could get along without." Dick said, "So long," and they departed. After breakfast, I went over to the city hall. Noonan's greenish eyes were bleary, as if they hadn't been sleeping, and his face had lost some of its color. He pumped my hand up and down as enthusiastically as ever, and the customary amount of cordiality was in his voice and manner. "Any line on Whisper?" I asked when we had finished the glad-handing. "I think I've got something." He looked at the clock on the wall and then at his phone. "I'm expecting word any minute. Sit down." "Who else got away?" "Jerry Hooper and Tony Agosti are the only other ones still out. We picked up the rest. Jerry is Whisper's man Friday, and the Wop's one of his mob. He's the bozo that put the knife in Ike Bush the night of the fight." "Any more of Whisper's mob in?" "No. We just had the three of them, except Buck Wallace, the fellow you potted. He's in the hospital." The chief looked at the wall clock again, and at his watch. It was exactly 2:00. He turned to the phone. It rang. He grabbed it, said, "Noonan talking." "Yes. Yes. Yes. Right." He pushed the phone aside and played a tune on the row of pearl buttons on his desk. The office filled up with coppers. "Cedar Hill Inn," he said. "You follow me out with your detail, Bates. Terry, shoot out Broadway and hit the dump from behind. Pick up the boys on traffic duty as you go along. It's likely we'll need everybody we can get. Duffy, take yours out Union Street and around by the old mine road. McGraw will hold headquarters down. Get hold of everybody you can and send them after us. Jump." He grabbed his hat and went after them, calling over his thick shoulder to me, "Come on, man, this is the kill." I followed him down to the department garage, where the engines of half a dozen cars were roaring. The chief sat beside his driver. I sat in back with 4 detectives. Men scrambled into the other cars. Machine guns were unwrapped. Armloads of rifles and riot guns were distributed, and packages of ammunition. The chief's car got away first, off with a jump that hammered our teeth together. We missed the garage door by half an inch, chased a couple of pedestrians diagonally across the sidewalk, bounced off the curb into the roadway, missed a truck as narrowly as we had missed the door, and dashed out King Street with our siren wide open. Panicky automobiles darted right and left, regardless of traffic rules, to let us through. It was a lot of fun. I looked back, saw another police car following us, a third turning into Broadway. Noonan chewed an old cigar and told the driver, "Give her a bit more, Pat." Pat twisted us around a frightened woman's coupe, put us through a slot between streetcar and laundry wagon, a narrow slot that we couldn't have slipped through if our car hadn't been so smoothly enameled, and said, "All right, but the brakes ain't no good." "That's nice," the gray-mustached sleuth on my left said. He didn't sound sincere. Out of the center of the city there wasn't much traffic to bother us, but the paving was rougher. It was a nice half-hour's ride, with everybody getting a chance to sit in everybody else's lap. The last 10 minutes of it was over an uneven road that had hills enough to keep us from forgetting what Pat had said about the brakes. We wound up at a gate topped by a shabby electric sign that had said Cedar Hill Inn before it lost its globes. The roadhouse, 20 feet behind the gate, was a squat wooden building painted a moldy green and chiefly surrounded by rubbish. Front door and windows were closed, blank. We followed Noonan out of the car. The machine that had been trailing us came into sight around a bend in the road, slid to rest beside ours, and unloaded its cargo of men and weapons. Noonan ordered this and that. A trio of coppers went around each side of the building. 3 others, including a machine gunner, remained by the gate. The rest of us walked through tin cans, bottles, and ancient newspaper to the front of the house. The gray-mustached detective who had sat beside me in the car carried a red axe. He stepped up on the porch. Noise and fire came out under a windowsill. The gray-mustached detective fell down, hiding the axe under his corpse. The rest of us ran away. I ran with Noonan. We hid in the ditch on the inside of the road. It was deep enough and banked high enough to let us stand almost erect without being targets. The chief was excited. "What luck!" he said happily. "He's here, by God! He's here!" "That shot came from under the sill," I said. "Not a bad trick." "We'll spoil it, though," he said cheerfully. "We'll sieve the dump. Duffy ought to be pulling up on the other road by now, and Terry Shane won't be many minutes behind him. Hey, Donner," he called to a man who was peeping around a boulder. "Swing around back and tell Duffy and Shane to start closing in as soon as they come, letting fly with all they got. Where's Kimball?" The peeper jerked a thumb toward a tree behind him. We could see only the upper part of it from our ditch. "Tell him to set up his mill and start grinding," Noonan ordered. "Low across the front, ought to do it like cutting cheese." The peeper disappeared. Noonan went up and down the ditch, risking his noodle over the top now and then for a look around, once in a while calling or gesturing to his men. He came back, sat on his heels beside me, gave me a cigar, and lit one for himself. "It'll do," he said complacently. "Whisper won't have a chance. He's done." The machine gun by the tree fired, haltingly, experimentally, 8 or 10 shots. Noonan grinned and let a smoke ring float out of his mouth. The machine gun settled down to business, grinding out metal like the busy little death factory it was. Noonan blew another smoke ring and said, "That's exactly what'll do it." I agreed that it ought to. We leaned against the clay bank and smoked, while farther away another machine gun got going, and then a third. Irregularly, rifles, pistols, shotguns joined in. Noonan nodded approvingly and said, 5 minutes of that will let him know there's a hell." When the 5 minutes were up, I suggested a look at the remains. I gave him a boost up the bank and scrambled up after him. The roadhouse was as bleak and empty-looking as before, but more battered. No shots came from it. Plenty were going into it. "What do you think?" Noonan asked. "If there's a cellar, there might be a mouse alive in it." "Well, we could finish him afterwards." He took a whistle out of his pocket and made a lot of noise. He waved his fat arms, and the gunfire began dwindling. We had to wait for the word to go all the way around. Then we crashed the door. The first floor was ankle-deep with booze that was still gurgling from bullet holes in the stacked-up cases and barrels that filled most of the house. Dizzy with the fumes of spilled hooch, we waited around until we found 4 dead bodies and no live ones. The 4 were swarthy, foreign-looking men in laborers' clothes. 2 of them were practically shot to pieces. Noonan said, "Leave them here and get out." His voice was cheerful, but in a flashlight's glow, his eyes showed wide-ringed with fear. We went out gladly, though I did hesitate long enough to pocket an unbroken bottle labeled Doer. A khaki-dressed copper was tumbling off a motorcycle at the gate. He yelled at us, "First National's been stuck up." Noonan cursed savagely, bawled, "He's foxed us, damn him. Back to town, everybody." Everybody except us who had ridden with the chief beat it for the machines. 2 of them took the dead detective with them. Noonan looked at me out of his eye corners and said, "This is a tough one, no fooling." I said, "Well," shrugged, and sauntered over to his car, where the driver was sitting at the wheel. I stood with my back to the house, talking to Pat. I don't remember what we talked about. Presently, Noonan and the other sleuths joined us. Only a little flame showed through the open roadhouse door before we passed out of sight around the bend in the road. End of Chapter 15. Chapter 16. Exit Jerry. There was a mob around the First National Bank. We pushed through it to the door, where we found sour-faced McGraw. "Was 6 of them, masked," he reported to the chief as we went inside. "They hit it about 2:30. 5 of them got away clean with the jack. The watchman here dropped one of them, Jerry Hooper. He's over on the bench cold. We got the roads blocked, and I wired around, if it ain't too late. Last seen of them was when they made the turn into King Street in a black Lincoln. We went over to look at the dead Jerry, lying on one of the lobby benches with a brown robe over him. The bullet had gone in under his left shoulder blade. The bank watchman, a harmless-looking old duffer, pushed up his chest and told us about it. There wasn't no chance to do nothing at first. They were in for anybody knew anything. And maybe they didn't work fast. Right down the line, scooping it up. No chance to do anything then. But I says to myself, all righty, young fellows, you've got it all your own way now, but wait till you try to leave. And I was good as my word, you bet you. I runs right to the door after them and cut loose with the old firearm. I got that fellow just as he was stepping into the car. I bet you I'd have got more of them if I'd have had more cartridges, because it's kind of hard shooting down like that, standing in the— Noonan stopped the monologue by patting the old duffer's back till his lungs were empty, telling him, "That certainly is fine. That certainly is fine." McGraw pulled a robe up over the dead man again and growled, "Nobody can identify anybody. But with Jerry on it, it's a cinch it was Whisper's caper." The chief nodded happily and said, "I'll leave it in your hands, Mac. Going to poke around here or going back to the hall with me?" he asked me. "Neither. I've got a date, and I want to get into dry shoes." Dinah Brand's little Marmon was standing in front of the hotel. I didn't see her. I went up to my room, leaving the door unlocked. I had got my hat and coat off when she came in without knocking. "My God, you keep a boozy-smelling room?" she said. "It's my shoes. Noonan took me wading in rum." She crossed to the window, opened it, sat on the sill, and asked, "What was that for?" "He thought he was going to find your Max out in a dump called Cedar Hill Inn. So we went out there, shot the joint silly, murdered some Dagos, spilled gallons of liquor, and left the place burning." "Cedar Hall Inn? I thought it had been closed up for a year or more." "It looked it, but it was somebody's warehouse." "But you didn't find Max there?" she asked. "While we were there, he seems to have been knocking over Elihu's First National Bank." "I saw that," she said. "I had just come out of Bengren's, the store 2 doors away. I had just got in my car when I saw a big boy backing out of the bank, carrying a sack and a gun, with a black handkerchief over his face." "Was Max with them?" "No, he wouldn't be. He'd send Jerry and the boys. That's what he has them for. Jerry was there. I knew him as soon as he got out of the car, in spite of the black handkerchief. They all had black ones. 4 of them came out of the bank, running down to the car at the curb. Jerry and another fellow were in the car. When the 4 came across the sidewalk, Jerry jumped out and went to meet them. That's when the shooting started, and Jerry dropped. The others jumped in the bus and lit out. How about that dough you owe me?" I counted out 10 $20 bills and a dime. She left the window to come for them. "That's for pulling Dan off, so you could cop Max," she said, when she had stowed the money away in her bag. "Now, how about what I was to get for showing you where you could turn up the dope on his killing Tim Noonan? You'll have to wait till he's indicted. How do you know the dope's any good?" She frowned and asked, "What do you do with all the money you don't spend?" Her face brightened. "You know where Max is now?" "No." "What's it worth to know?" "Nothing." "I'll tell you for $100. "I wouldn't want to take advantage of you that way." "I'll tell you for $50. I shook my head. "25. "I don't want him," I said. "I don't care where he is." "Why don't you peddle the news to Noonan?" "Yes, and try to collect." "Do you only perfume yourself with booze, or is there any for drinking purposes?" "Here's a bottle of so-called Doer that I picked up at Cedar Hill this afternoon. There's a bottle of King George in my bag. What's your choice?" She voted for King George. We had a drink apiece straight, and I said, "Sit down and play with it while I change clothes." When I came out of the bathroom 25 minutes later, she was sitting at the secretary, smoking a cigarette and studying a memoranda book that had been in a side pocket of my Gladstone bag. "I guess these are the expenses you've charged up on other cases," she said without looking up. "I'm damned if I can see why you can't be more liberal with me. Look, here's a $600 item marked Inf. That's information you bought from somebody, isn't it? And here's $150 below it. Top, whatever that is. And here's another day when you spent nearly $1,000. They must be telephone numbers, I said, taking the book from her. Where were you raised? Fanning my baggage. I was raised in a convent, she told me. I won the Good Behavior Prize every year I was there. I thought little girls who put extra spoons of sugar in their chocolate went to hell for gluttony. I didn't even know there was such a thing as profanity until I was 18. The first time I heard any, I damn near fainted. She spit on the rug in front of her, tilted her chair back, put her crossed feet on my bed, and asked, "What do you think of that?" I pushed her feet off the bed and said, "I was raised in a waterfront saloon. Keep your saliva off my floor, or I'll toss you out on your neck." Let's have another drink first. Listen, what'll you give me for the inside story of how the boys didn't lose anything building the city hall? The story that was in the papers I sold Donald Wilson. That doesn't click with me. Try another. How about why the first Mrs. Lou Yard was sent to the insane asylum? No. King, our sheriff, $8,000 in debt 4 years ago, now the owner of as nice a collection of downtown business blocks as you'd want to see. I can't give you all of it, but I can show you where to get it. Keep trying, I encouraged her. No, you don't want to buy anything. You're just hoping you'll pick up something for nothing. This isn't bad scotch. Where'd you get it? Brought it from San Francisco with me. What's the idea of not wanting any of this information I'm offering? Think you can get it cheaper? Information of that kind's not much good to me now. I've got to move quick. I need dynamite, something to blow them apart. She had laughed and jumped up, her big eyes sparkling. I've got one of Lou Yard's cards. Suppose we sent the bottle of Dewar you copped to Pete with the card. Wouldn't he take it as a declaration of war? If Cedar Hill was a liquor cache, it was Pete's. Wouldn't the bottle and Lou's card make him think Noonan had knocked the place over under orders? I considered it and said, too crude. It wouldn't fool him. Besides, I'd just as lief have Pete and Lou both against the chief at this stage. She pouted and said, You think you know everything. You're just hard to get along with. Take me out tonight. I've got a new outfit that'll knock them cockeyed. Yeah. Come up for me around 8. She patted my cheek with a warm hand, said, Ta-ta, and went out as the telephone bell began jingling. My Chinch and Dix are together at your client's joint, Mickey Linehan reported over the wire. Mine's been generally busier than a hustler with 2 bunks, though I don't know what the score is yet. Anything new? I said there wasn't, and went into conference with myself across the bed, trying to guess what would come of Noonan's attack on Cedar Hill Inn and whispers on the First National Bank. I would have given something for ability to hear what was being said up at old Elihu's house by him, Pete the Finn, and Lou Yard, but I hadn't that ability, and I was never much good at guessing, so after half an hour I stopped tormenting my brain and took a nap. It was nearly 7 o'clock when I came out of the nap. I washed, dressed, loaded my pockets with a gun and a pint flask of scotch, and went up to Dinah's. End of Chapter 16. Chapter 17. Reno. She took me into her living room, backed away from me, revolved, and asked me how I liked the new dress. I said I liked it. She explained that the color was rose beige, and that the dinguses on the side were something or other, winding up. And you really think I look good in it? You always look good, I said. Lou Yard and Pete the Finn went calling on old Elihu this afternoon. She made a face at me and said, You don't give a damn about my dress. What did they do there? A powwow, I suppose. She looked at me through her lashes and asked, Don't you really know where Max is? Then I did. There was no use admitting I hadn't known all along. I said, Ed Wilson's probably, but I haven't been interested enough to make sure. That's goofy of you. He's got reasons for not liking you and me. Take Mama's advice and nail him quick if you like living and like having Mama live too. I laughed and said, You don't know the worst of it. Max didn't kill Noonan's brother. Tim didn't say Max. He tried to say Max Swain and died before he could finish. She grabbed my shoulders and tried to shake my 190 pounds. She was almost strong enough to do it. God damn you! Her breath was hot in my face. Her face was white as her teeth. Rouge stood out sharply like red labels pasted on her mouth and cheeks. If you framed him and made me frame him, you've got to kill him. Now! I don't like being manhandled, even by young women who look like something out of mythology when they're steamed up. I took her hands off my shoulders and said, "Stop belly aching. You're still alive?" "Yes, still. But I know Max better than you do. I know how much chance anybody that frames him has got of staying alive long. It would be bad enough if we got him right, but don't make such a fuss over it. I framed my millions and nothing's happened to me. Get your hat and coat and we'll feed. You'll feel better then." "You're crazy if you think I'm going out. Not with that—" "Stop it, sister. If he's that dangerous, he's just as likely to get you here as anywhere. So what difference does it make? It makes up. You know what you're going to do. You're going to stay here until Max is put out of the way. It's your fault, and you've got to look out for me. I haven't even got Dan. He's in the hospital." "I can't," I said. "I've got work to do. You're all burnt up over nothing. Max has probably forgotten all about you by now. Get your hat and coat. I'm starving." She put her face close to mine again, and her eyes looked as if they had found something horrible in mine. "Oh, you're rotten," she said. "You don't give a damn what happens to me. You're using me as you used the others. That dynamite you wanted. I trusted you. You're dynamite, all right, but the rest of it's kind of foolish. You look a lot better when you're happy. Your features are heavy. Anger makes them downright brutal. I'm starving, sister. You'll eat here," she said. "You're not going to get me out after dark." She meant it. She swapped the rose beige dress for an apron and took inventory of the icebox. There were potatoes, lettuce, canned soup, and half a fruitcake. I went out and got a couple of steaks, rolls, asparagus, and tomatoes. When I came back, she was mixing gin, vermouth, and orange bitters in a quart shaker, not leaving a lot of space for them to move around in. "Did you see anything?" she asked. I sneered at her in a friendly way. We carried the cocktails into the dining room and played bottoms up while the meal cooked. The drinks cheered her a lot. By the time we sat down to the food, she had almost forgotten her fright. She wasn't a very good cook, but we ate as if she were. We put a couple of ginger ales in on top the dinner. She decided she wanted to go places and do things. No lousy little runt could keep her cooped up because she had been as square with him as anybody could be, until he got nasty over nothing. And if he didn't like what she did, he could go climb trees or jump in lakes. And we'd go out to the Silver Arrow where she had meant to take me, because she had promised Reno she'd show up at his party, and by God she would. And anybody who thought she wouldn't was crazy as a pet cuckoo, and what did I think of that? "Who's Reno?" I asked, while she tied herself tighter in the apron by pulling the strings the wrong way. "Reno Starkey. You'll like him. He's a right guy. I promised him I'd show at his celebration, and that's just what I'll do." "What's he celebrating?" "What the hell's the matter with this lousy apron? He was sprung this afternoon." "Turn around and I'll unwind you." "What was he in for?" "Stand still." "Blowing a safe 6 or 7 months ago. Turlock's the jeweler. Reno, Put Collings, Blackie Whalen, Hank O'Mara, and a little lame guy called Step and a Half. They have plenty of cover. New Yard. But the Jewelers Association dicks tied the job to them last week. So Noonan had to go through the motions. It doesn't mean anything. They got out on bail at 5 o'clock this afternoon, and that's the last anybody will ever hear about it. Reno's used to it. He was already out on bail for 3 other capers. Suppose you mix another little drink while I'm inserting myself in the dress. The Silver Arrow was halfway between Poisonville and Mock Lake. "It's not a bad dump," Dinah told me as her little marmon carried us toward it. "Polly DeVoto is a good scout, and anything she sells you is good, except maybe the bourbon. That always tastes a little bit like it had been drained off a corpse. You'll like her. You can get away with anything out here, so long as you don't get noisy. She won't stand for noise. There it is. See the red and blue lights through the trees?" We rode out of the woods into full view of the roadhouse, a very electric-lighted imitation castle set close to the road. "What do you mean, she won't stand for noise?" I asked, listening to the chorus of pistols singing bang, bang, bang. "Something up?" the girl muttered, stopping the car. Two men dragging a woman between them ran out of the roadhouse's front door, ran away into the darkness. A man sprinted out a side door, away. The gun sang on. I didn't see any flashes. Another man broke out and vanished around the back. A man leaned far out a front second-story window, a black gun in his hand. Dinah blew her breath out sharply. From a hedge by the road, a flash of orange pointed briefly up at the man in the window. His gun flashed downward. He leaned farther out. No second flash came from the hedge. The man in the window put a leg over the sill, bent, hung by his hands, dropped. Our car jerked forward. Dinah's lower lip was between her teeth. The man who had dropped from the window was gathering himself up on hands and knees. Dinah put her face in front of mine and screamed, "Reno!" The man jumped up, his face to us. He made the road in 3 leaps as we got to him. Dinah had the little Marmon wide open before Reno's feet were on the running board beside me. I wrapped my arms around him and damned near dislocated them holding him on. He made it as tough as he could for me by leaning out to try for a shot at the guns that were tossing lead all around us. Then it was all over. We were out of range, sight and sound of the Silver Arrow, speeding away from Poisonville. Reno turned around and did his own holding on. I took my arms in and found that all the joints still worked. Dinah was busy with the car. Reno said, "Thanks, kid. I needed pulling out." "That's all right," she told him. "So that's the kind of parties you throw?" "We had guests that wasn't invited." "You know the Tanner Road?" "Yes." "Take it. It'll put us over to Mountain Boulevard, and we can get back to town that-a-way." The girl nodded, slowed up a little, and asked, "Who were the uninvited guests? Some plugs that don't know enough to leave me alone?" "Do I know them?" she asked, too casually, as she turned the car into a narrower and rougher road. "Let it alone, kid," Reno said. "Better get as much out of the heap as it's got." She prodded another 15 miles an hour out of the Marmon. She had plenty to do now holding the car to the road, and Reno had plenty holding himself to the car. Neither of them made any more conversation until the road brought us into one that had more and better paving. Then he asked, "So, you paid Whisper off?" They're saying you'd turn rat on him." "They would. What do you think? Ditching him was all right. But throwing in with a dick and cracking the works to him is kind of sour. Damned sour, if you ask me." He looked at me while he said it. He was a man of 34 or 5, fairly tall, broad and heavy, without fat. His eyes were large, brown, dull, and set far apart, in a long, slightly sallow horse face. It was a humorless face, stolid, but somehow not unpleasant. I looked at him and said nothing. The girl said, "If that's the way you feel about it, you can look out," Reno grunted. We had swung around a curve. A long black car was straight across the road ahead of us, a barricade. Bullets flew around us. Reno and I threw bullets around while the girl made a polo pony of the little Marmon. She shoved it over to the left of the road, let the left wheels ride the bank high, crossed the road again with Reno's and my weight on the inside, got the right bank under the left wheels just as our side of the car began to lift in spite of our weight, slid us down in the road with our backs to the enemy, and took us out of the neighborhood by the time we had emptied our guns. A lot of people had done a lot of shooting, but so far as we could tell, nobody's bullets had hurt anybody. Reno, holding to the door with his elbows while he pushed another clip into his automatic, said, "Nice work, kid. You handled the bus like you meant it." Dinah asked, "Where now?" "Far away first. Just follow the road. We'll have to figure it out. Looks like they got the bird closed up on us. Keep your dog on it." We put 10 or 12 more miles between Poisonville and us. We passed a few cars, saw nothing to show we were being chased. A short bridge rumbled under us. Reno said, "Take the right turn at the top of the hill." We took it, into a dirt road that wound between trees down the side of a rock-ridged hill. 10 miles an hour was fast going here. After 5 minutes of creeping along, Reno ordered a halt. We heard nothing, saw nothing, during the half-hour we sat in darkness. Then Reno said, "There's an empty shack a mile down the way. We'll camp there, huh? There's no sense trying to crash the city line again tonight." Dinah said she would prefer anything to being shot at again. I said it was all right with me, though I would rather have tried to find some path back to the city. We followed the dirt track cautiously until our headlights settled on a small clapboard building that badly needed the paint it had never got. "Is this it?" Dinah asked Reno. "Uh-huh. Stay here till I look it over." He left us, appearing soon in the beam of our lights at the shack door. He fumbled with keys at the padlock, got it off, opened the door, and went in. Presently, he came to the door and called, "All right, come in and make yourselves to home." Dinah cut off the engine and got out of the car. "Is there a flashlight in the car?" I asked. She said, "Yes," gave it to me, yawned. "My God, I'm tired. I hope there's something to drink in the hole." I told her I had a flask of scotch. The news cheered her up. The shack was a one-room affair that held an army cot covered with brown blankets, a deal table with a deck of cards and some gummy poker chips on it, a brown iron stove, 4 chairs, an oil lamp, dishes, pots, pans, and buckets, 3 shelves with canned food on them, a pile of firewood, and a wheelbarrow. Rena was lighting the lamp when we came in. He said, "Not so tough. I'll hide the heap and then we'll be all set till daylight." Dinah went over to the cot, turned back the covers, and reported, "Maybe there's things in it, but anyway, it's not alive with them. Now, let's have that drink." I unscrewed the flask and passed it to her while Reno went out to hide the car. When she had finished, I took a shot. The purr of the Marmon's engine got fainter. I opened the door and looked out. Downhill, through trees and bushes, I could see broken chunks of white light going away. When I lost them for good, I returned indoors and asked the girl, "Have you ever had to walk home before?" "What?" "Reno's gone with the car." "The lousy tramp! Thank God he left us where there's a bed, anyway. That'll get you nothing." No. Reno had a key to this dump. 10 to 1, the birds after him know about it. That's why he ditched us here. We're supposed to argue with them, hold them off his trail a while." She got up wearily from the cot, cursed Reno, me, all men from Adam on, and said disagreeably, "You know everything. What do we do next?" "We find a comfortable spot in the great open spaces, not too far away, and wait to see what happens. I'm going to take the blankets." "Maybe one won't be missed, but you'll tip our mitts if you take more than that." "Damn your mitts," she grumbled, but she took only 1 blanket. I blew out the lamp, padlocked the door behind us, and with the help of the flashlight, picked a way through the undergrowth. On the hillside above, we found a little hollow from which road and shack could be not too dimly seen through foliage thick enough to hide us unless we showed a light. I spread the blanket there, and we settled down. The girl leaned against me and complained that the ground was damp, that she was cold in spite of her fur coat, that she had a cramp in her leg, and that she wanted a cigarette. I gave her another drink from the flask. That bought me 10 minutes of peace. Then she said, "I'm catching cold. By the time anybody comes, if they ever do, I'll be sneezing and coughing loud enough to be heard in the city." "Just once," I told her. "Then you'll be all strangled." "There's a mouse or something crawling under the blanket. Probably only a snake." "Are you married?" "Don't start that." "Then you are?" "No." "I'll bet your wife's glad of it." I was trying to find a suitable comeback to that wisecrack when a distant light gleamed up the road. It disappeared as I shushed the girl. "What is it?" she asked. "A light. It's gone now. Our visitors have left their car and are finishing the trip afoot." A lot of time went by. The girl shivered with her cheek warm against mine. We heard footsteps, saw dark figures moving on the road and around the shack, without being sure whether we did or didn't. A flashlight ended our doubt by putting a bright circle on the shack's door. A heavy voice said, "Well, let the broad come out." There was a half-minute of silence while they waited for a reply from indoors. Then the same heavy voice said, "Coming?" Then more silence. Gunfire, a familiar sound tonight, broke the silence. Something hammered boards. "Come on," I whispered to the girl. "We'll have a try at their car while they're making a racket." "Let them alone," she said, pulling my arm down as I started up. "I've had enough of it for one night. We're all right here." "Come on," I insisted. She said, "I won't," and she wouldn't, and presently, while we argued, it was too late. The boys below had kicked in the door, found the hut empty, and were bellowing for their car. It came, took 8 men aboard, and followed Reno's track downhill. We might as well move in again, I said. It's not likely they'll be back this way tonight. I hope to God there's some scotch left in that flask, she said, as I helped her stand up. End of Chapter 17. Chapter 18. Painter Street. The shack's supply of canned goods didn't include anything that tempted us for breakfast. We made the meal of coffee cooked in very stale water from a galvanized pail. A mile of walking brought us to a farmhouse where there was a boy who didn't mind earning a few dollars by driving us to town in the family Ford. He had a lot of questions, to which we gave him phony answers, or none. He sat us down in front of a little restaurant in Upper King Street, where we ate quantities of buckwheat cakes and bacon. A taxi put us at Dinah's door a little before 9 o'clock. I searched the place for her, from roof to cellar, and found no signs of visitors. "When will you be back?" she asked as she followed me to the door. "I'll try to pop in between now and midnight, if only for a few minutes. Where does Lou Yard live?" 1622 Painter Street. Painter's 3 blocks over. 1622's 4 blocks up. "What are you going to do there?" Before I could answer, she put her hands on my arm and begged, "Get Max, will you? I'm afraid of him." "Maybe I'll sick Noonan on him a little later. It depends on how things work out." She called me a damned double-crossing something or other who didn't care what happened to her as long as his dirty work got done. I went over to Painter Street. 1622 was a red brick house with a garage under the front porch. A block up the street, I found Dick Foley in a hired drive-yourself Buick. I got in beside him, asking, "What's doing?" "Spot 2. Out 3:30. Office to Wilson's. Mickey, 5. Home, busy, kept plant. Off 3, 7, nothing yet." That was supposed to inform me that he had picked up Lou Yard at 2 the previous afternoon, had shouted him to Wilson's at 3:30, where Mickey had tailed Pete, and followed Yard away at 5 to his residence, had seen people going in and out of the house, but had not shadowed any of them, had watched the house until 3 this morning, and had returned to the job at 7, and since then had seen nobody go in or out. "You'll have to drop this and take a plant on Wilson's," I said. "I hear Whisper Theater's holding up there, and I'd like an eye kept on him till I make up my mind whether to turn him up for Noonan or not." Dick nodded and started the engine grinding. I got out and returned to the hotel. There was a telegram from the old man. "Send by first mail full explanation of present operation and circumstances under which you accepted it with daily reports to date." I put the telegram in my pocket and hoped things would keep on breaking fast. To have sent him the dope he wanted at that time would have been the same as sending in my resignation. I bent a fresh collar around my neck and trotted over to the city hall. "Hello," Noonan greeted me. "I was hoping you'd show up. Tried to get you at your hotel, but they told me you hadn't been in." He wasn't looking well this morning, but under his glad handing, he seemed, for a change, genuinely glad to see me. As I sat down, one of his phones rang. He put the receiver to his ear, said, "Yes," listened for a moment, said, "You better go out there yourself, Mac," and had to make 2 attempts to get the receiver back on its prong before he succeeded. His face had gone a little doughy, but his voice was almost normal as he told me, "Lou Yard's been knocked off. Shot coming down his front steps just now." "Any details?" I asked while I cursed myself for having pulled Dick Foley away from Painter Street an hour too soon. That was a tough break. Noonan shook his head, staring at his lap. "Shall we go out and look at the remains?" I suggested, getting up. He neither got up nor looked up. "No," he said wearily to his lap. "To tell the truth, I don't want to. I don't know as I could stand it just now. I'm getting sick of this killing. It's getting to me. On my nerves, I mean." I sat down again, considered his low spirits, and asked, "Who do you guess killed him?" "God knows," he mumbled. "Everybody's killing everybody. Where is it going to end?" "Think Reno did it?" Noonan winced, started to look up at me, changed his mind, and repeated, "God knows." I went at him from another angle. "Anybody knocked off in the battle at the Silver Arrow last night?" "Only 3. "Who were they?" "A pair of Johnson brothers named Blackie Whalen and Pud Collings. that only got out on bail around 5 yesterday, and Dutch Jake Wall, a gorilla. What was it all about? Just a rough house, I guess. It seemed that Pud and Blackie and the others that got out with them were celebrating with a lot of friends, and it wound up in smoke, all of them Lou Yard's men. I don't know anything about that, he said. I got up, said, "Oh, all right," and started for the door. "Wait," he called. "Don't run off like that." I guess they were. I came back to my chair. Noonan watched the top of his desk. His face was gray, flabby, damp, like fresh putty. Whispers staying at Wilson's. I told him. He jerked his head up. His eyes darkened. Then his mouth twitched, and he let his head sag again. His eyes faded. "I can't go through with it," he mumbled. "I'm sick of this butchering. I can't stand any more of it. Sick enough to give up the idea of evening the score for Tim's killing, if it'll make peace," I asked. "I am." "That's what started it," I reminded him. "If you're willing to call it off, it ought to be possible to stop it." He raised his face and looked at me with eyes that were like a dog's looking at a bone. "The others ought to be as sick of it as you are," I went on. "Tell them how you feel about it. Have a get-together and make peace." "They think I was up to some kind of a trick," he objected miserably. "Have the meeting at Wilson's. Whisper's camping there. You'd be the one risking tricks going there. Are you afraid of that?" He frowned and asked, "Will you go with me?" "If you want me. Thanks," he said. I'll try it." End of Chapter 18. Chapter 19. The Peace Conference. All the other delegates to the Peace Conference were on hand when Noonan and I arrived at Wilson's home at the appointed time, 9 o'clock that night. Everybody nodded to us, but the greetings didn't go any further than that. Pete the Finn was the only one I hadn't met before. The bootlegger was a big-boned man of 50 with a completely bald head. His forehead was small, his jaws enormous, wide, heavy, bulging with muscle. We sat around Wilson's library table. Old Elihu sat at the head. The short clipped hair on his round pink skull were like silver in the light. His round blue eyes were hard, domineering under their bushy white brows. His mouth and chin were horizontal lines. On his right, Pete the Finn sat watching everybody with tiny black eyes that never moved. Reno Starkey sat next to the bootlegger. Reno's sallow horse face was as stodily dull as his eyes. Max Thayer was tilted back in a chair on Wilson's left. The little gambler's carefully pressed pants legs were carelessly crossed. A cigarette hung from one corner of his tight-lipped mouth. I sat next to Thayer. Noonan sat on my other side. Elihu Wilson opened the meeting. He said things couldn't go on the way they were going. We were all sensible men, reasonable men, grown men who had seen enough of the world to know that a man couldn't have everything his own way, no matter who he was. Compromises were things everybody had to make sometimes. To get what he wanted, a man had to give other people what they wanted. He said he was sure that what we all most wanted now was to stop this insane killing. He said he was sure that everything could be frankly discussed and settled in an hour without turning Poisonville into a slaughterhouse. It wasn't a bad oration. When it was over, there was a moment of silence. Thayer looked past me at Noonan, as if he expected something of him. The rest of us followed his example, looking at the chief of police. Noonan's face turned red, and he spoke huskily. "Whisper, I'll forget you killed Tim." He stood up and held out a beefy paw. "Here's my hand on it." Thayer's thin mouth curved into a vicious smile. "Your bastard of a brother needed killing, but I didn't kill him," he whispered coldly. Red became purple in the chief's face. I said loudly, "Wait, Noonan. We're going at this wrong. We won't get anywhere unless everybody comes clean. Otherwise, we'll all be worse off than before. McSwain killed Tim, and you know it." He started at me with dumbfounded eyes. He gaped. He couldn't understand what I had done to him. I looked at the others, tried to look virtuous as hell, asked, "That's settled, isn't it? Let's get the rest of the kicks squared." I addressed Pete the Finn. "How do you feel about yesterday's accident to your warehouse and the 4 men?" "One hell of an accident," he rumbled. I explained. Noonan didn't know you were using the joint. We went there thinking it was empty, just to clear the way for a job in town. Your men shot first, and then he really thought he'd stumbled into Thader's hideout. When he found he'd been stepping in your puddle, he lost his head and touched the place off. Thader was watching me with a hard, small smile in eyes and mouth. Reno was all dull stolidity. Elihu Wilson was leaning toward me, his old eyes sharp and wary. I don't know what Noonan was doing. I couldn't afford to look at him. I was in a good spot if I played my hand right, and in a terrible one if I didn't. The men, they get paid for taking chances. Pete the Finn said. For the other, 25 grand will make it right. Noonan spoke quickly, eagerly. All right, Pete, all right, I'll give it to you. I pushed my lips together to keep from laughing at the panic in his voice. I could look at him safely now. He was licked, broken, willing to do anything to save his fat neck, or try to. I looked at him. He wouldn't look at me. He sat down and looked at nobody. He was busy trying to look as if he didn't expect to be carved apart before he got away from these wolves to whom I had handed him. I went on with the work, turning to Elihu Wilson. Do you want to squawk about your bank being knocked over, or do you like it? Max Thader touched my arm and suggested, We could tell better maybe who's entitled to beef if you give us what you've got first. I was glad to. Noonan wanted to nail you, I told him, but he either got word, or expected to get word from Yard and Wilson here to let you alone. So he thought if he had the bank looted and framed you for it, your backers would ditch you and let him go after you right. Yard, I understand, was supposed to put his okay in all the capers in town. You'd be cutting into his territory and gypping Wilson. That's how it would look, and that was supposed to make them hot enough that they'd help Noonan cop you. He didn't know you were here. Reno and his mob were in the can. Reno was Yard's pup, but he didn't mind crossing up his head man. He already had the idea that he was about ready to take the burg away from Lou. I turned to Reno and asked, Isn't that it? He looked at me woodenly and said, You're telling it. I continued telling it. Noonan fakes a tip that you're at Cedar Hill and takes all the coppers he can't trust out there with him, even cleaning the traffic detail out of Broadway, so Reno would have a clear road. McGraw and the bulls that are in on the play let Reno and his mob sneak out of the hoosegow, pull the job, and duck back in. Nice thing in alibis. Then they get sprung on bail a couple of hours later. It looks as if Lou Yard tumbled. He sent Dutch Jake Wall and some other boys out to the Silver Arrow last night to teach Reno and his pals not to take things in their own hands like that, but Reno got away and got back to the city. It was either him or Lou then. He made sure which it would be by being in front of Lou's house with a gun when Lou came out this morning. Reno seems to have had the right dope, because I notice that right now he's holding down a chair that would have been Lou Yard's if Lou hadn't been put on ice. Everybody was sitting very still, as if to call attention to how still they were sitting. Nobody could count on having any friends among those present. It was no time for careless motions on anybody's part. If what I had said meant anything one way or the other to Reno, he didn't show it. Thader whispered softly, Didn't you skip some of it? You mean the part about Jerry? I kept on being the life of the party. I was coming back to that. I don't know whether he got away from the can when you crushed out and was caught later, or whether he didn't get away, or why, and I don't know how willingly he went along on the bank caper. But he did go along, and he was dropped and left in front of the bank because he was your right bower, and his being killed there would pin the trick to you. He was kept in the car till the getaway was on. Then he was pushed out and was shot in the back. He was facing the bank with his back to the car when he got his. Thader looked at Reno and whispered, Well? Reno looked with dull eyes at Thader and asked calmly, What of it? Thader stood up and said, Deal me out, and walked to the door. Pete the Finn stood up, leaning on the table with big bony hands, speaking from deep in his chest, whisper. And when Thader had stopped and turned to face him, I'm telling you this. You, Whisper, and all of you. That damn gun work is out. All of you understand it. You've got no brains to know what is best for yourselves. So I'll tell you. This busting the town open is no good for business. I won't have it any more. You be nice boys, or I'll make you. I got one army of young fellows that know what to do on any end of a gun. I got to have them in my racket. If I get to use them on you, I'll use them on you. You want to play with gunpowder and dynamite? I'll show you what playing is. You like to fight? I'll give you fighting. Mind what I tell you. That's all. Pete the Finn sat down. Vader looked thoughtful for a moment and went away without saying or showing what he had thought. His going made the others impatient. None wanted to remain until anybody else had time to accumulate a few guns in the neighborhood. In a very few minutes, Elihu Wilson and I had the library to ourselves. We sat and looked at one another. Presently, he said, "How would you like to be the chief of police?" "No, I'm a rotten errand boy. I don't mean with this bunch, after we've got rid of them. And got another just like them." "Damn you," he said. "It wouldn't hurt to take a nicer tone to a man old enough to be your father, who curses me and hides behind his age." Anger brought a vein out blue in his forehead. Then he laughed. "You're a nasty talking lad," he said, "but I can't say you haven't done what I paid you to do. A swell lot of help I've got from you. Did you need wet nursing? I gave you the money and a free hand. That's what you asked for. What more did you want?" "You old pirate," I said. "I blackmailed you into it, and you played against me all the way till now, when even you can see that they're hell-bent on gobbling each other up. Now you talk about what you did for me. Old pirate," he repeated. "Son, if I hadn't been a pirate, I'd still be working for the Anaconda for wages, and there'd be no Poisonville Mining Corporation. You're a damned little woolly lamb yourself, I suppose. I was had, son, where the hair was short. There were things I didn't like. Worse things that I didn't know about until tonight, but I was caught and had to bide my time. Why, since that Whisper Theater has been here, I've been a prisoner in my own home, a damned hostage." "Tough. Where do you stand now?" I demanded. "Are you behind me?" "If you win." I got up and said, "I hope to Christ you get caught with them." He said, "I reckon you do, but I won't." He squinted his eyes merrily at me. "I'm financing you. That shows I mean well, don't it? Don't be too hard on me, son. I'm kind of—" I said, "Go to hell," and walked out. End of chapter 19.